A royal aide rushes down the corridor, a sealed envelope, a trembling hand, and in that moment, Prince Edward's expression changes forever. What he read not only shattered decades of tradition, but ignited a firestorm behind palace walls. Queen Elizabeth's final wishes had named Zara Tindall, not Prince Harry, as the chosen heir to a major royal inheritance. The monarchy would never be the same again. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The corridors of Windsor Castle, once filled with quiet mourning after the Queen's passing, suddenly stirred with whispers of something far more volatile than grief. Prince Edward, long considered the monarch's most dutiful and understated child, was personally summoned by a senior royal archivist. Hidden within the Queen's sealed vault, beneath layers of royal documentation, was an envelope marked in her unmistakable handwriting, to be read only in extremis. That moment had arrived. The letter was removed with ceremony and reverence, yet what lay inside struck Edward with the weight of thunder. A handwritten directive, elegant and unmistakably personal, declared Zara Tindall as the monarch's desired heir to a key royal inheritance, an estate long believed to be safeguarded for one of the Queen's direct male heirs. This was no ordinary gesture. This inheritance wasn't a ceremonial trinket or honorific title. It was personal land. A private estate steeped in royal tradition and memories, one the Queen had fiercely protected for decades. And it was not destined for Prince William, nor Prince Harry. In fact, Harry's name appeared only once in the document, and the mention was far from flattering. It simply read, "His path diverged. Let legacy remain with those who stayed." That one sentence was more than a royal rebuke. It was a verdict, and Edward, known for his emotional restraint, reportedly sat in silence for nearly an hour after reading it. Not even Sophie, his closest confidante, was allowed near him during those first moments. Palace staff later confessed that the prince delayed informing the rest of the family by almost a week. Not out of defiance, but heartbreak. The contents of the letter were more than a disruption, they were a redirection of legacy itself. Zara, the Queen's eldest granddaughter, had always been viewed as something of a royal outsider. She held no title, lived without royal privilege, and rarely appeared on the front lines of monarchy affairs. But the Queen's letter painted a different truth, one shaped in shadows, loyalty, and unspoken affection. And with Edward now caught in the middle of a brewing inheritance storm, it became clear that this wasn't simply about assets. It was about trust. As rumors trickled through the royal halls, reactions ranged from hushed awe to outright disbelief. Some questioned whether Edward had misread the document. Others wondered if it was planted. But handwriting analysis confirmed its authenticity, and the Queen's seal had been untouched. There was no room for misinterpretation. What remained was the thunderous realization that Zara Tindall had been chosen quietly, intentionally, and with purpose. The monarchy's line of inheritance, at least in the Queen's private world, had taken a decisive turn. But the question was no longer whether Zara had been chosen, it was why. And the answer, hidden in the Queen's regrets, began with a betrayal buried years earlier. While the public believed Queen Elizabeth maintained neutrality, insiders tell a different story, one of disappointment, heartbreak, and quiet resolve. What triggered the sovereign's decision to quietly sideline her own grandson? And why did she turn toward a granddaughter long considered unofficial? What began as a royal departure soon escalated into what many inside the palace now describe as a slow, painful fracture between a grandmother and the grandson she once adored. After Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's announcement to step back from royal duties, Queen Elizabeth was said to have responded with poise and understanding, at least publicly. But behind the polished statements and rehearsed smiles, private correspondence paints a more tragic picture. Sources close to the Queen confirm that following the infamous Sandringham summit, where the royal family convened to discuss the couple's future, Elizabeth emerged visibly shaken. For the first time in decades, she reportedly broke royal protocol by allowing emotion to show. One aide, who had served her for over 20 years, described witnessing the Queen weep silently in her private quarters, muttering only, "This wasn't supposed to end like this." What hurt her most wasn't the departure itself, but what followed. The press interviews. The subtle, then overt, criticisms of the institution she had devoted her life to. Meghan's bombshell statements during her high-profile interviews were not just public relations nightmares, they were perceived by the Queen as deeply personal affronts. Elizabeth had always prided herself on discretion, restraint, and loyalty. To watch those values discarded on global television was, for her, a betrayal she could neither confront nor ignore. And when Harry's legal team pushed for continued taxpayer-funded security despite the couple's relocation and status change, something shifted within the monarch. It wasn't about the money, it was about principle. Harry, in her eyes, had walked away not just from duty, but from the code she believed held the family and the crown together. In contrast, Zara had never needed the spotlight. She had never asked for titles or status. She competed. She worked. She served quietly, diligently, and without fanfare. Through personal struggles and royal crises, she never made a single public misstep, nor sought validation. It wasn't that Zara was favored over Harry for being perfect. It was that she embodied, in her unspoken way, the very virtues the Queen held sacred. And in the wake of Harry's highly publicized exit, Elizabeth began to reconsider not just who stood in line, but who had stood by her side when it mattered most. That slow reevaluation grew into something far greater. The Queen, long known for her stoicism, was quietly rewriting her definition of legacy. Not in the headlines, not in court circulars, but in her heart. She started spending more private time with Anne, Edward, and significantly Zara. She asked pointed questions. She revisited old papers. And she began to leave behind a breadcrumb trail of intent that only the closest family members would come to understand. And while the Queen turned inward, she began crafting a legacy not just of titles, but of trust. And that trust, it seems, was placed in the hands of a granddaughter who had never asked for anything. She was never styled princess. She rode horses instead of limousines. But behind Zara Tindall's quiet life was a relationship so intimate, so unshakable, that Queen Elizabeth left her a secret role in the family's future. Why did the monarch bypass her titled heirs for the granddaughter who never wanted the spotlight? From the moment she could walk, Zara Tindall was by the Queen's side, not in gilded carriages or televised appearances, but in stables, on windswept fields, and during hushed Sunday mornings far from flashing cameras. Their bond didn't need royal ribbons to hold it together. It was forged in shared silences, competitive spirits, and a mutual understanding that loyalty wasn't proven through proclamations, but through quiet constancy. The Queen found in Zara something that the rest of the family, burdened with crowns and cameras, often lacked: authenticity. A life lived without demands. A name that carried royal blood, but never chased royal privilege. Zara's lack of title, once viewed as a curious anomaly, eventually became the very reason the Queen admired her most. Elizabeth believed that freedom often revealed true character, and Zara had proven herself beyond measure. When Prince Philip passed, it wasn't the official heirs who stood with the emotional weight of the family. It was Zara, calm, composed, and unwavering. Those who watched closely noted her comforting presence, the way she bridged generations in that fragile moment of loss. It wasn't her public demeanor that struck the Queen, but her private strength. In the background, away from headlines, Zara had already begun quietly fulfilling the role her grandmother envisioned for her. Behind closed doors, Zara had become the monarchy's quiet fixer. During tense family gatherings, she was the bridge between feuding factions. She coordinated conversations between Anne and Charles when communication had once broken down. She was the one who soothed nerves during Harry's explosive exit, even arranging subtle gestures to diffuse tension before meetings. None of this made it to the press, but the Queen saw it all. She didn't need speeches, she needed someone who understood the weight of family without needing to wear a crown. That person was Zara. The Queen's praises for her granddaughter were never public, but they were deeply felt. Aides later confirmed that Elizabeth often referred to Zara as her peace, a grounding presence in a family spiraling under the weight of scandal, ambition, and fractured loyalties. Where others faltered or fled, Zara remained steadfast and discreet, not because she was bound by obligation, but because she chose to be. In a monarchy increasingly defined by spectacle, Zara became the quiet force of preservation. And in the Queen's final days, it became clear. Zara had not only earned her trust, she had earned her place in the future of the royal lineage. But if the Queen's choice of Zara was a testament of love, the reaction it provoked from Prince Harry was anything but quiet. Witnesses say Prince Harry turned white when informed of the inheritance revelation, then red, then silent. But what followed inside the palace was described as a verbal explosion, sharp words, accusations, and a chilling remark that left even Prince Edward stunned. The call was meant to be private, respectful, even compassionate. Prince Edward, the quiet steward of the Queen's most personal decisions, had taken it upon himself to inform Harry before the media caught wind. But from the moment Harry answered, the conversation veered into dangerous territory. When Edward broke the news that Queen Elizabeth had named Zara, not him, as the heir to a significant inheritance, there was a long, stifling pause. Then came Harry's voice, low and tight. "She promised me I'd be protected." Was that a lie? Edward, stunned by the weight of the accusation, reportedly tried to explain the Queen's reasoning, citing Zara's loyalty, her quiet service, her bond with Her Majesty. But Harry wasn't listening. He had already felt the sting, not just of exclusion, but of betrayal. Within hours, word reached Meghan, and with it came the machine legal advisors, public relations strategists, and crisis management consultants. Meghan, according to insiders, insisted they prepare a legal inquiry into the Queen's handwritten documents. Not necessarily to challenge the inheritance, but to gain access to any letters that might implicate broken promises. It wasn't just about money, it was about reputation, about legacy, and about power. Aides recall seeing Harry pacing in Montecito, making heated calls to Edward and even Charles, demanding to see what was written. He reportedly threatened to publish previously unreleased letters between him and the Queen correspondence that had remained private out of respect, but now, in Harry's hands, felt like a ticking time bomb. What no one expected was the tone Harry used with Edward. According to one source, the exchange devolved into a shouting match. Harry, once seen as the Queen's darling boy, accused Edward of orchestrating the decision behind the Queen's back. "She never would have chosen Zara unless someone got to her," he allegedly snapped. Edward's response was brief, but firm. "Don't insult her memory because you don't like her truth." The silence that followed was deafening. But the emotional damage was already done. The fallout reached London quickly. Camilla, aware of the tension threatening to split the monarchy even further, reportedly turned to Charles with a dire warning, "This will unravel us all." She wasn't wrong. What had started as a quiet honoring of Zara had now turned into a high-stakes game of royal brinkmanship. And while Harry prepared to act, the palace shifted into emergency mode. Not to fight back, but to protect what little remained of the Queen's final privacy. And unravel it did, because what followed wasn't just royal fury, but a scramble to lock down the Queen's papers before more truths spilled into public light. A midnight operation, dozens of boxes, and a handwritten order from King Charles to seal a vault the Queen had used for decades. But it was too late. Some letters had already been seen, some copied, and one found its way into the hands of an outsider. The storm had already been brewing. In the days following the explosive revelations about Zara's inheritance, the palace was plunged into chaos. While outwardly composed, behind the scenes it was a different story: panicked calls, emergency meetings, and a frantic inventory of every letter, note, and classified document Her Majesty had left behind. But nothing could prepare the archivists for what they uncovered: multiple envelopes missing. Some marked with the Queen's personal seal. And among the most alarming was a file labeled simply Sandringham Testament, a title that carried the weight of a royal reckoning. Its contents, according to one palace aide, were a blend of personal instructions, inheritance clauses, and reflections the Queen had never intended for public release. The disappearance of the document sent shockwaves across the royal household. It wasn't just an administrative failure, it was a breach of the Queen's most intimate legacy. Security footage raised alarms when a discreet vehicle, allegedly registered to an overseas tabloid intermediary, was spotted near one of the lesser-used palace exits days after the funeral. Worse still, Zara's husband, Mike Tindall, reportedly called in private security after detecting signs of a break-in attempt at their countryside estate. This wasn't about scandal anymore. It was about sabotage. But even amid the disorder, more secrets were bubbling to the surface. A newly uncovered letter addressed to Princess Anne hinted at what the Queen had long kept hidden: an unspoken arrangement, as she phrased it. The contents, insiders claim, pointed directly to Zara's role in the family's future and the inheritance she was meant to receive. The language was subtle, guarded, but unmistakable. Elizabeth hadn't just chosen Zara, she had built an entire contingency plan around her, quietly preparing her daughter and granddaughter for a transition the public was never meant to see. King Charles, realizing the danger, acted swiftly. He issued a confidential royal order to seal all remaining private correspondence stored at Balmoral, Windsor, and Sandringham. Aides were sworn to silence, locks were changed, access was revoked. But in spite of the clampdown, the damage was done. One trusted aide, now dismissed without severance or ceremony, was rumored to have leaked part of the Sandringham Testament to a foreign publication. Though the document never reached the headlines, its contents were now in circulation, quietly passed among international editors, palace insiders, and rival factions within the family itself. The monarchy was no longer reacting to scandal, it was fighting to preserve its soul. What had started as a private decision by the Queen had spiraled into a full-blown intelligence crisis. Every letter, every note, every passing thought Elizabeth had committed to paper now carried explosive potential. And as Charles tightened the noose around the remaining archives, there was one figure who stepped into the storm not to conceal, but to confirm what had long been feared. But as royal operatives scrambled to contain the leak, one person had already stepped forward to confirm the Queen's intentions: Princess Anne. When Princess Anne speaks, the room listens. But when she confirmed what had only been whispered, that Zara was chosen above Harry, it was more than a royal statement. It was a warning. And it signaled a major power realignment within the monarchy. The confirmation did not come through a televised address or a dramatic press conference. It came quietly, in a private chapel meeting at Windsor, where Anne summoned Prince Edward and Sophie under the weight of unfolding chaos. By then, tensions were already tearing at the seams of the family. Leaks, accusations, legal threats. The monarchy was wobbling between discretion and disaster. Anne, however, did not waver. Those present say she stood with a calm that bordered on steel. Her voice was measured, but every word carried force. "This is what Mother wanted," she reportedly said. "I won't let anyone rewrite her last wish." In that single sentence, she drew a line clear and immovable. Anne's loyalty to her mother had always been unshakable, but this moment felt different. It wasn't just about honoring Queen Elizabeth. It was about protecting the integrity of her final decision. Insiders describe Anne's bond with Zara as mirroring the relationship Elizabeth once shared with her sister Margaret: complex, protective, and fiercely devoted. Zara had been raised in Anne's image, resilient, grounded, unafraid of hard work. And Anne believed her daughter had earned the Queen's trust not through bloodline, but through consistency. In her eyes, this inheritance was not favoritism. It was recognition. When Anne later issued a carefully worded public statement, it seemed diplomatic on the surface. She spoke of respecting Her Majesty's personal decisions and preserving private wishes. But beneath the formal language lay an unmistakable message: the matter was settled. There would be no debate, no renegotiation, no bending to pressure from overseas interviews or strategic legal maneuvering. The palace press team immediately entered crisis mode, scrambling to anticipate backlash. Every headline was dissected, every quote parsed. The fear was no longer about inheritance, it was about escalation. Camilla, aware of the volatility, reportedly urged King Charles to release a clarification, something that might soften the impact or reframe the narrative before it spiraled further. But Anne resisted any attempt to dilute the truth. She refused to allow the Queen's intentions to be wrapped in vague statements or bureaucratic ambiguity. To her, this was sacred ground. And as whispers of division grew louder, Anne's stance hardened the fault lines within the family. For the first time since the Queen's passing, it was clear that this wasn't just a personal inheritance dispute, it was a quiet struggle over moral authority. Edward, who had carried the burden of revelation, now found himself shielded by Anne's resolve. Zara, meanwhile, remained silent, allowing the storm to rage without comment. But silence, in royal terms, is never neutral. It speaks. And it unsettles. Just as the palace believed Anne's declaration might stabilize the situation, another truth began to surface, one hidden not in letters or sentiment, but in numbers and signatures. And just when the monarchy thought it had regained control, a second bombshell surfaced, buried in the Queen's financial directives. It was never in the will, never in the official record. But hidden in a royal trust dating back to King George VI was a financial clause updated mere months before the Queen's passing. The listed beneficiary? Zara Phillips. And the estimated value? Enough to rival Harry and Meghan's entire estate. As the palace attempted to contain the emotional fallout from Princess Anne's declaration, a second revelation struck with calculated precision this time from the depths of the royal financial archives. The Windsor Discretionary Trust, a complex financial structure originating in the reign of George VI, had long been understood as a symbolic reserve, a backup plan for rare emergencies. But what few realized was that the Queen had quietly restructured a significant portion of this trust in early 2022. The update was neither publicly disclosed nor catalogued in her official estate filings. It was buried under multiple legal layers, accessible only to a handful of royal attorneys and, eventually, Prince Edward. When the trust documents surfaced, it wasn't a matter of speculation. The Queen's signature was there. So was her personal annotation in the margins beside Zara's name. She asked for nothing. That's why she deserves everything. That single sentence confirmed what months of tension had hinted at. This inheritance wasn't a consolation prize. It was the Queen's final, unfiltered judgment. The assets tied to the trust included land parcels rarely spoken of, royal equestrian facilities maintained in private, and a diverse investment portfolio established decades earlier. Zara wasn't just receiving symbolic authority, she was being placed in control of real, tangible power. The most remarkable detail? The structure of the trust was specifically designed to funnel through an equine development fund, one that Zara herself would chair. Its purpose: to preserve the royal family's legacy in equestrian sport, heritage, and diplomacy. Through this role, Zara wouldn't just inherit wealth. She would become the steward of a centuries-old tradition once beloved by the Queen and Prince Philip. This wasn't favoritism, it was strategy. The monarchy was reimagining its future, not through protocol, but through personal trust. But there was a darker layer beneath the surface. The same trust contained an exclusion clause, one that explicitly blocked Prince Harry and any direct descendants from accessing, influencing, or profiting from its holdings. The clause, worded with deliberate precision, made it clear: no person who has voluntarily relinquished their royal duties and pursued civil renunciation abroad shall hold benefit under this trust. It was a legal blow disguised as formality, but its impact was undeniable. To some, it was a message; to others, a reckoning. For Edward, the documents represented not just closure, but vindication. He had delivered the Queen's private wishes with integrity. For Anne, it solidified her daughter's place in a restructured royal order. And for Harry, it was another locked door, another cold truth that no interview or memoir could unlock. But as the dust settled from the financial revelations, one final act sent the strongest message, yet a symbolic ceremony held behind locked gates. No cameras, no crowds, just 5 members of the royal family under a gray sky. And in that stillness, Zara Tindall was handed something never before seen by the public, a pendant worn only by one woman in the family's private history. A gesture that meant one thing: the Queen's legacy had chosen its heir. The air was thick with solemnity as Edward and Anne arrived first at Fragmore's hidden chapel, long shielded from press intrusion and public fanfare. It was a location chosen not for grandeur, but for meaning. This was where Elizabeth had once retreated after her most trying moments, and now it would become the setting for the most silent, most personal coronation the monarchy had ever witnessed. Zara entered with no fanfare, no announcement, only the weight of what she was about to receive etched across every unspoken glance. What was presented to her was not a crown, but something arguably more intimate: a pendant once belonging to Queen Mary, passed only to women who carried the family's quiet strength across generations. Edward spoke first. His voice was low, but every word landed like a bell toll. He recounted the Queen's final wishes, not just in writing, but in spirit. Anne followed, placing her hand on Zara's and offering the medallion, an heirloom that had never appeared in royal portraits, but that symbolized a deeper inheritance. One of character, of perseverance, of sacrifice. Those watching knew this was no ordinary gesture. It was the final fulfillment of the Queen's private legacy, a passing of the torch not in titles or estates, but in trust. Princess Catherine's presence confirmed what many had suspected for weeks. The new alignment within the royal family had solidified. She stood with Zara, quietly lending her support, knowing the weight of this transition. It was a silent signal from the future queen consort to the woman now chosen as the queen's personal successor. No words were needed. They stood together as two women carrying separate but intertwined parts of a fractured institution's future. Absent from this ceremony were Harry and Meghan deliberately, and with legal confirmation. Their exclusion was not symbolic, it was procedural. A palace official confirmed that they had been informed but were not invited, citing strict adherence to the Queen's written instructions. This wasn't vengeance, it was clarity. The few who knew about the event now refer to it in hushed tones as the quiet coronation. But what it lacked in spectacle, it made up for in finality. The medallion was more than an heirloom, it was a declaration that Zara Tindall, untitled and once unnoticed, had become the living embodiment of the Queen's most personal hopes for the family's survival. But even this wasn't the final act, because Edward, the Queen's trusted guardian of secrets, had one last message to deliver. Before returning to silence, Prince Edward sat for a final conversation with the Queen's biographer. What he said stunned even the interviewer. "She made me promise not to let titles define legacy," he whispered. "And I intend to keep that promise, starting with Zara." The interview was never meant for public release. It was filmed behind closed doors, under the tightest confidentiality agreements the palace could muster. And yet, it leaked piece by piece, sentence by sentence, until its full gravity reached the ears of a stunned public. In it, Prince Edward revealed not the legal details of the Queen's inheritance, but the emotional truth she left behind. He called it her unwritten will. A collection of thoughts, fears, and hopes that didn't exist on parchment, but lived in the choices she made and the promises she extracted before her final breath. Edward, long viewed as the quietest of the royal siblings, had become the keeper of something far more powerful than property. He had become the voice of the Queen's soul. He spoke of a monarch haunted by history. Not the grandeur, but the gaps. The people overlooked, the sacrifices unrecognized. He recalled one of her last lucid moments, where she feared that the chronicles of royal power would forget those who stood not in front of her, but beside her. She feared history would forget who stood by her, he said. And then, with a pause heavy enough to echo, he added, "She asked me to remember for her, to act for her." Edward's tone shifted when he spoke of Zara. "I saw how peace bloomed in her presence," he admitted. The Queen never had to guard her words around Zara. She never had to wonder if there'd be a headline the next morning. It wasn't loyalty by blood, it was loyalty by choice. Zara had offered her presence without expectation. Her silence had often spoken louder than 1,000 interviews. Her steadiness had become the Queen's refuge. As the camera rolled, Edward's final quote wrapped the entire storm of revelations into one devastatingly simple truth. She may not wear a crown, but she carries the Queen's heartbeat. And in that line, decades of hierarchy dissolved. The story was no longer about rank. It was about remembrance. Rumors have already begun circulating that this was not the last we'd hear from Edward. Palace insiders suggest a private foundation, led by Zara and quietly endorsed by Catherine, may soon emerge, an initiative rooted in the Queen's original values. Whispers of Zara's increasing presence at royal consultations are growing louder. Some call it coincidence, others inevitability. Because in the end, the crown may sit on a throne, but legacy rests in the hands of those chosen by love, not bloodline. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.